Well, good morning, everyone. I'm a little off my game this morning because I just gave the whole talk sitting here on the porch, stopped it, took my phone down, and realized that I had not been recording the whole time. So how are you this morning? I hope you are doing well and more on your game than I am. I don't know. It just, I can't quite get my head or my heart around everything that is happening. Because so much of what we see, more shootings, more young black men being shot, more young men, in this case a white man carrying a big gun, thinking that he's going to bring about justice by wielding that gun, and he ends up shooting 3 people, 2 of which die. More of this notion that violence will bring about peace in some way. I don't know, it just doesn't add up to me. More hateful rhetoric, more division. It just is exhausting. And I watch too much news, I know that, but I just keep thinking I'm going to see something that's going to make me think, oh, this is not as bad as I think it is. But anyway, in the midst of everything, we have these passages every week to look at that are meant to instruct us and bring us encouragement. And this week's lectionary passage it's kind of a continuation of last week, that there was this conversation where the disciples recognized Jesus as the one that they've been waiting for. Of course, they still don't understand what they've been waiting for. They think they've been waiting for one thing, but they will soon find out that they were waiting for something quite different. And Jesus begins to tell them that what he's doing, there's going to be suffering involved. In fact, suffering all the way to death, but that won't be the end of it. Well, they don't like that. They don't want to hear that message. Nobody wants to hear a message about suffering. And right now, we're in the midst of a 6-month pandemic of suffering. And we don't want to hear that either, do we? So how can this bring us good news? Well, one thing, the message is that won't be the end of it. That Jesus' suffering, eventually, that love will rise in life again. And so that there's nothing that can destroy a life that comes from love. Many things can be thrust upon it. There can be suffering, but it won't kill it. And I think that's important for us to remember, that there is a sort of redemptive suffering that we are called to in life. If we want to be part of the bigger picture, if we want to really be people of love, it's going to require suffering at times. Sometimes it'll be the suffering of just disciplining ourselves and disciplining ourselves to wear a mask, even though we would rather not do it. My 2 granddaughters started back to school, and they have a bunch of safety precautions, and one of them is that the kids have to wear a mask all day, or any time that they're around each other than the distance in their desk. And they put on those little masks before they leave, and they don't say a word. They just understand that this is part of the greater good. That's the small thing. And then there's other kinds of sufferings that the first response people, the nurses and doctors that are traveling around the country, they are suffering. They're away from their families in order to bring healing to the greater body. Redemptive suffering comes from the heart out. In Jesus' words, he said, you have to be willing to take up your cross. Now, we don't get to pick what our particular cross is. But in every life, there will be things that we'll have to bear. And what brings the redemption is how we bear it and in what strength and who we look to for that strength. There's another myth of redemptive violence, which is different from redemptive suffering, and I want to just talk about that this morning. I know I've talked about the lie of redemptive violence before, but I think it's the redemptive suffering is the answer, the counter to redemptive violence. Redemptive violence is where someone thinks that the way to bring about peace is to bring violence to stop it, to stop the violence with violence. Now, it sounds absurd to say it, but over and over again, society after society, war after war, the notion is that we will bring the ultimate violence that will end all violence. And in a lot of Christian circles, that the idea is that Jesus was killed so that would end, that would redeem everything, that would redeem all of the brokenness of the world, as if that act of violence was going to make everything better. But see, Jesus did suffer violence for us, but it wasn't a requirement imposed on Jesus. Jesus suffered out of that love, out of that life, out of that notion of redemption. But it wasn't a requirement imposed on Jesus in any sort of way in order to bring about more life. You look for yourself in history. Anytime there might be violence, the atomic bomb might have ended the momentary violence, but it hadn't stopped war. It hadn't stopped violence in the world. So I think that that's very important for us to remember right now, because, for instance, there's these peaceful protests that are so important, these voices rising up to say, enough of the injustice. And then there's these infiltrators. I don't know who they are, if they're right, left, up, down, but people who come and bring violence and looting and destruction, and even those that are bringing about death in the name of stopping the violence. It's crazy. It's all upside down. So I think it's important for us to remember now that we may be called, most definitely will be called, to participate in redemptive suffering at times, but that God is never about redemptive violence. I know that this message might not resonate with some of you because you've been taught different things, and I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just expressing my heart this morning that is completely broken by the violence that I see. There is a better way. I'm trying to figure out what is the redemptive suffering that I am to bear in this moment in order to be more loving, to participate in the greater picture of bringing about life, about doing my part to participate in this moment to bring about healing. That's all I got for this morning. God bless you, and go in peace.